Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Please excuse me, I got a little bit of a cold, so just bear with me. Look, man, boom, Terence Crawford. His wrestling background is what's going to be needed to defeat Errol Spence. Because let me tell you something. I think people are forgetting that Terence Crawford has an expanded wrestling background. And I think people also forget that there was a time where Bob Arum was trying to line up a two-fight deal between Crawford and Conor McGregor. One would be in the boxing ring, the other one would be in the octagon. And the reason for that is because at the time, Bob Arum just wasn't able to get top welterweights to fight Terence Crawford. And doesn't matter who's to blame. The bottom line is we all know when Terence Crawford was with Bob Arum, he just wasn't getting the legacy-defining fights. But Arum went on to say, and this is why I think it's interesting, because I'm going to get to what Arum said, but the reality of the situation is this. Errol Spence, I think it's fair to say, is bigger. I'm not sure who's stronger, but physically he may be stronger. And Errol Spence is a physical fighter. He imposes his size. He imposes his strength. He even uses his arms to control the opponent, control their positioning. Once he gets close, he'll use those forearms and elbows and his hips and his body to shift and get the defender in a vulnerable position, and then Errol Spence lets his hands go. And let me tell you, if you're not a person comfortable with being physical like that, comfortable with wrestling, comfortable with kind of, trying to jostle and shift your opponent, right? Manhandle somebody or someone manhandling you. When the real deal starts in the boxing ring, you are going to be uncomfortable and you could wilt under that kind of physical pressure. But the truth of the matter is, with Errol Spence and Terence Crawford going into this undisputed unification bout, right? We know that Errol Spence has declared himself fully healthy, and he has also declared himself as the bigger, stronger fighter. But one thing I don't think Spence and his team fully understand is that when it comes to Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, and if one of those guys, no matter how physical Errol Spence wants to be, wants to go into a crossover fight with an MMA fighter, I'm going to be honest with you. Most people will pick Bud Crawford to win in an MMA fight because of the wrestling background. And for that reason, I think when Errol Spence gets in there and he does try to get physical with Bud, push him around, manhandle him, shift him into vulnerable positions, jostle him around the ring, I think he's going to realize with the real quick that he's in damn near a crossover fight because Terence Crawford's not going for the BS. Now, I'll tell you this. Errol Spence will go out there and he would challenge a Conor McGregor, just like Terence Crawford would. Errol Spence would go out there and try to fight somebody in the UFC to make some money. Remember, Errol Spence said he feels that no man can damage him if the concrete couldn't break him. Right? That's what he said. I'm not saying that. But the reality is this. The Angels were looking over Errol Spence when he had that car accident. Right? Going into an MMA fight and not having the right skill set, that's a whole nother ball of wax. And I think when you look at Terence Crawford, I think he's going to be able to control Spence on the inside. He's going to be able to shift him. I think there may be times where he gets Spence off balance, and you may even see Spence get thrown to the ground. I'm just being honest with you. Talking about that octagon, or whether Errol Spence or Terence Crawford, let me tell you something. Errol Spence can train as long as he wants. I just don't think he'll ever be able to get beyond the power curve to be competitive in a wrestling match or an MMA fight. Terence Crawford, I think he would do just fine. The issue will come with the kicks. Now, Terence Crawford could train for that because he doesn't have to put as much focus into other areas like Errol Spence would have to focus on every area. And again, there's a deficit there that I don't think he'd be able to overcome. And there are a lot of people who have been with Terence Crawford that said Terence Crawford is a world-class wrestler. And they said anyone who thinks that Terence Crawford, although he's an amazing boxer, right? And some people feel he was a pound-for-pound best. For those of you who think And they're talking to MMA fighters. If you think you can just run up on Terence Crawford and it's going to be a matter of you grabbing him, tussling him, getting him to the ground, and getting him and submitting him or hurting him, they're like, you have another thing coming. Terence Crawford is world class. And anyone who wants that challenge, they should step up to the plate because it could be a massive payday for them, but they could lose. And a lot of people favor Terence Crawford with the right training to go on into the MMA world and for him to win. And I'm going to tell you right now, there is a reason why his sons are nationally ranked wrestlers. There's a reason why Terence Crawford is doing what he's doing. And there's a reason why Terence Crawford has never, ever been bullied in the ring. Y'all seen that video? I don't know if Terence Crawford was power cleaning or if he was doing deadlifts. Don't know how much weight Terence Crawford had on that bar. But to see Terence Crawford sitting there, fighting at 147, and I don't know if that was 405, 495, however much he had on that bar. But it's the idea that Terence Crawford was able to get that up as comfortable as he did. I think anybody who's getting in the ring with him would have to worry about his stand-up game because of just how strong he is. And that includes not just Errol Spence, but anybody else in boxing and any potential MMA fights. But bottom line, Errol Spence has been training and sparring a lot of southpaws. He's got the great sparring for this camp, but I think the one thing that Errol Spence may not be doing is working on that wrestling game, that inside tussling game with someone who's bigger and stronger and who's probably going to surprise him with just that, what I call that skinny strength. You know what I mean? You get some people who grew up, like my dad, right? He grew up farming and stuff like that, not lifting weights. There's a different type of strength that comes with someone who's grown up doing a lot of manual labor. And my dad was just, as a different type of gorilla grip. We used to wrestle with a man, and he'd grab us, and that grip was something that you never ever experienced. Same thing when you think about a guy like Francis Ngannou. That manual labor, that gorilla grip, that strength is something that you just can't, weights can't give you that. And it's my understanding that Terence Crawford has that kind of gorilla grip, that kind of gorilla strength that weights just can't help you achieve. Just like somebody being naturally heavy-handed. You know what I'm saying? No matter how much you learn to put your weight behind your punches and to turn into your punches and turn your punches over and make them short and straight, it doesn't matter. If you're born heavy-handed, you're born heavy-handed, and you can never close that gap. I don't care what anyone says. But we're going to see what happens when Errol Spence and Crawford get in the ring, and Errol Spence is going to test it out. And Crawford's going to test it out as well to see what happens when they lock horns and if they happen to be fighting in close, which Errol Spence is quite comfortable doing. And I think he and his team are going to realize with the quickness that, holy crap, this guy Crawford is strong and I can't bully him. But at the same time, we got to be real now. If Terence Crawford can't control Spence and get that respect the way he's accustomed to, oh boy, we could all be in for a big surprise. But that being said, more to come on Crawford and Spence. Fight's going to be popping 29 July. I'm looking forward to it. But I'm telling y'all, try to think about this outside the box. This isn't just about Crawford, who's right-handed, but fights southpaw most of his fight. This isn't just about him coming in there and being southpaw versus southpaw and how's Crawford going to do with that. This isn't about him coming in there and maybe he should be orthodox and shoot the straight right hand. This isn't about that. This isn't about counterpunching, in my opinion. This isn't about that. This, in my opinion, with Crawford and Spence, it boils down more to the physical aspect of the fight and the tussling and the wrestling and the just being overall, destructive in that ring. And I don't think it's going to have anything to do with the fist. I think you're going to have to do with everything with these guys trying to prove that they're the bigger, stronger fighter. And I think whoever wins in that arena, that's the person who goes on to win the fight. But again, I'm going to tell you right now, I still think the whole fight is 50-50. and I can't wait to see what happens. But don't for one second think that I don't know that Errol Spence is strong too. But I just think the wrestling background is one thing to be strong and one thing to be strong with a skill set. And we're going to see what shows up in the ring when Crawford and Spence get things popping. That being said, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans, all 7 continents. In the breeze.